You know their names. You've heard of their preaching, their miracles, and their courage. But what really happened to the disciples after the Gospels end? Where did Peter, John, Thomas go? What history doesn't tell is about to be revealed. And one thing is certain, their ending isn't what you expect. Halfway through the video, you'll discover which disciple was killed in the most cruel way of all, and why it was hidden. Jerusalem, year 33, a city gripped by political tension, religious conflict, and messianic hope. A group of 12 ordinary men, fishermen, tax collectors, revolutionaries, witnessed something that completely changes the history of humanity, the resurrection of a man. From that moment on, each of them becomes a target, but also a flame. Today, we will follow the trail left by these men after the end of the New Testament, where they went, what they lived, and how they died. What you will hear now is not in sermons, it is in the forgotten records of history. We begin with Peter, the impulsive leader, the same one who sank into the waters for doubting, then walked on them for believing. After Pentecost, Peter became a central figure in Jerusalem, but he mysteriously disappears from the book of Acts. Why? Historical records indicate that he traveled to Rome. There he confronted the empire and attracted the attention of Nero, the emperor who would burn down the city and blame the Christians. Years later, Peter would be crucified, but upside down. Important detail, he himself requested it. But why? The answer is at the end of this video, and it completely changes the way we view this man. Meanwhile, John, the beloved disciple, lives a parallel story. All the others would be persecuted. All the others would die brutal deaths, except him. John survived. He was imprisoned, exiled, forgotten. On the island of Patmos, far from everything, he writes the most enigmatic book in the Bible, Revelation. But what few know is that John survived an attempted execution. He was doused in boiling oil and came out alive. Reports say the silence in the Colosseum was absolute. No one understood. He should have died, but he didn't. Why?
According to historian and theologian Dr. Marcus Ephraim of the University of Antioch, the first century record is clear. The disciples did not stop after Acts. They spread to the four corners of the known world, and each of them left traces in cultures that had never heard the name of Jesus. Among these traces is the path of Thomas. Yes, the same one who doubted the resurrection, the same one who put his finger on Jesus' wounds. He went all the way to India, more than 5,000 kilometers from Jerusalem. There, he founded Christian communities that exist to this day, known as St. Thomas Christians. But the end was brutal. A group of local Hindu priests refused to accept his growing influence. Thomas was pierced with spears while praying in a cave. He didn't try to escape. He didn't scream. He simply stayed. Why? Bartholomew went to Armenia. He preached, baptized, and formed disciples. But one detail is rarely mentioned in popular texts. He was captured, and according to historian Eusebius, had his skin ripped from his still-living body. That's right, flayed, then beheaded. The reason? To convert the region's king, a decision that cost him his life, but also changed the history of an entire people.
Remember Peter, the one who asked to be crucified upside down? The reason behind this reveals a level of consciousness many overlook. According to ancient texts, he said, "I am not worthy to die like my Lord." This phrase, recorded by Origen, echoes to this day in the Roman catacombs where he was supposedly buried. But here's the curious detail. Years later, beneath the altar of St. Peter's Basilica, excavations uncovered an ancient tomb with the bones of a man crucified upside down. Coincidence? Perhaps. But what if not? Now what about Judas Thaddeus? Not to be confused with Judas Iscariot. This Judas went to Persia. There, he and Simon the Zealot evangelized together. They were persecuted, captured, and killed side by side. One of them sawn in half, the other beheaded. No one knows for sure who suffered which death, but the two were buried together, in silence, far from their homeland, in the name of a mission. And what about Matthew the tax collector? After writing one of the most widely read Gospels in history, he disappears from the pages of the Bible. But not from history. Reports claim that Matthew went to Ethiopia, where he was killed by a sword during a service. He was allegedly attacked inside the temple itself while teaching that all were equal before God, an idea that disturbed the local social system. An evangelist, murdered in a service. The irony is as brutal as it is true. James, son of Alphaeus, met an even crueler end. According to the writings of Flavius Josephus, he was thrown from the pinnacle of the temple in Jerusalem. But he didn't die in the fall. Then he was stoned. Yet, he resisted, and he only died when he was beaten with a club. This scene, recorded by non-Christian sources, reveals a shocking detail. The place of his death was the same place where Satan tempted Jesus years earlier. And now, Simon the Zealot, a former Jewish revolutionary, a man trained to fight against the empire, converted to the faith. He preached in Mauritania and then in Persia. His end? Crucified. But before that, he did something that changed the fate of an entire village. An Ethiopian manuscript tells of a confrontation between Simon and a pagan priest. The result? 137 people converted and were executed along with him. The sacrifice of one brought faith to all the others. Do you see the pattern? They were different. They had different stories, backgrounds, personalities, and flaws, but a single message united them, and for it, they were all willing to go all the way, literally. What happened to the disciples after the Bible is not just a list of tragic deaths. It reflects the impact something invisible had on ordinary people. Now comes the plot twist. Even with the demise of all 12 disciples, their message didn't die. On the contrary, it grew, it spread, it spanned centuries, and it has reached you now here in this video. The question is, why and how? If you've made it this far, you're probably wondering, what about Paul? What about Mary? What about the other names that also marked history but disappeared from the biblical text? The answers are even more surprising, and perhaps you've never heard them before.